Michael, so lovely to see you.
Well, and you're a cave.
I am my woman cave. So Michael and I know each other very well from many years of being in London, doing all sorts of mad tricks with Mr. McKenna, the hypnotist, and NLP days. So we've spent a lot of time together, haven't we, Michael?
Back when phones were this big.
Yeah, that's right. So I'd love to chat to you today, and I'm interested. I'm thinking about creativity because my book's available in the US. So I'm loving to talk to you about creativity and what you found about creativity in your amazing journeying through transforming so many people's lives.
Well, it's been very front of mind for me because I've been. I just finished running a bunch of courses called Emerging Voices, which are all about creativity. And one of the things that has just become clearer and clearer and clearer as through teaching those courses is that there's two aspects to it. And one is the well, you know, the expression going to the well. You know, it's the source. It's what Gaudi, the architect, called the origin. If you want to be original, go to the origin. And so there's one part of it which is the same for everyone. And that's where you go for it. Everyone gets there in completely different ways, but everyone's going to the same well, the same place. But then what comes from that are crafts. So I actually, because I knew we were going to be talking about this, here's one I prepared earlier.
Oh, good.
You know, I don't know. I couldn't see it. But like this, you know, skip this bit because this was another bit. But if you think of sort of that little black dot there, metaphorically, is the creative source. The painter Michel calls it point zero. Like on a grid, on an array, the center point where you can go in any direction from there. It doesn't yet have any form or shape. And this little blue circle around the black dot is our personality, our history, it's our flavoring. So even though the well water is pure, once it comes through us, it'll take on a bit of our flavor. Now, if something, I like to think of it like seasoning a meal. If there's too much seasoning, all you taste is the seasoning, right? So sometimes people try to be creative and there's just too much them in it and not, there's nothing, you can't taste the source because all you've got is them, right? Too little of you in it and it's bland, like too little seasoning. It's like, yeah, it's pure, but it's just bland, it's generic. When you get it right, there's just enough seasoning to bring out the flavor of what you're seasoning. And so, you know, some people will really love soup-flavored creativity, you know, creative source. Some people really like Micheal-flavored creative source. But then, don't order yet. There are crafts. So, you know, in this case, I was coaching as a craft, speaking as a craft, writing as a craft, screenwriting as a craft, you know, painting as a craft, you know, and we all, in developing our creativity and getting out into the world, those are the three sticking points. You know, one, are you looking to the origin, or are you looking to create from your memory, you know, from, well, they've done this, but I'm going to be creative and I'm going to do the same thing, but 5 degrees to the right. You know, that's a different thing. That's not what I would call creativity. That's just messing with shit, right? There's finding that amount of us so that we're not getting in the way of it, but we are allowing it to come through us. So we're more the conduit in that metaphor than the source. But we're not channeling. It's not completely neutral. We're involved. So it's filtering through us, and that's what gives it our flavor. But then sometimes where the sticking point is people just haven't developed the craft enough. I remember somebody presenting me with a manuscript, one of my students, and reading it, and with no meanness attached, but I said, your next one's going to be better.
Yeah.
And went, yeah, it is. And it was.
I've just been judging some writing awards, which I've not done before. And it's so fun, Michael, because suddenly as a writer, I've just been busy doing my own book, and I'm in my process, and it's me and the book. And I'm doing what I can to bring that in. Now I'm being presented with like 20 a day different little snippets of books that other people have written. So I'm bam, bam, bam. I've got to do 120, and I've chunked it down to do 10 or 12 a day, so I'm not overwhelmed. So I'm looking at each of these things. So each day I'm looking at 10 different pieces of writing, and I have to comment on it. And I want to be nice and kind. I also want to be constructive and useful. And I've also got to be fair and honest to award this correctly, because it's a beautiful award that's going to somewhere. And so I was reading these things thinking, what is it that makes great writing? What is it that switches me off or switches me onto it very fast? Some of them I was reading the title and I'm like, you got me on the title. It's wonderful. And then I go and read further down, it gets better and better. And I'm like, good. And I've been asking the question, what is it that is, they're all words on pages. They're all telling
what stories. Is it? Did you get any answers? Still in the question?
Because I've had to write little synopsis and reports like a school teacher, reviewing them. So in the reviews, I've realized what's been important to me. It's rhythm, it's engaging, it's stories that draw you in with beautiful language. And it's what you said, it's not too difficult, the language, it's not too super fine, but it's accessible enough that it's in easy access. It's easy access, but it actually gives you something beautiful, a really warm, beautiful feeling. The other thing is that when you were talking about, made those comments just now, I was thinking about Elizabeth Gilbert in Big Magic. I love the way that she talks about ideas floating across like clouds, almost a collective consciousness of ideas. And we have to jump up and grab the ones that are for us. And many people might do that at the same time. You see ideas coming in at the same time. I've done writing, I'm sure you have, where you see other people who have started writing very similar things. I even read a book once, which I thought, my gosh, that's really like the one I've just done. But mine isn't out yet, so they can't accuse me of plagiarizing. But it seems that ideas stop down.
So when The Space Within, I'd finished it, Hay House were prepping it for publication. And one of my colleagues, Dickon Bettinger, and his writing partner, Natasha Swerdlov, had just finished their book and sent it to me to see if I'd read a quote. Different titles. Theirs was called Coming Home. Mine was called The Space Within. The opening quote was the same, and it's an obscure quote. It's a quote from a tape recording that I happen to have. Like, it's not but exact same quote at the beginning. And it was different, but it was the same book in their flavor and mine. And I wrote him immediately and said, hey, just so you know, I have a book coming out next month that is going to look like I just ripped you off, but it's already at the publishers. It's like, and that does happen.
So interesting. It's happened to us both. I literally wanted to tell them that my book, is not out yet, but it's going to look the same as this. Anyway, the idea is the same. And so we're figuring out that ideas drop down, and it depends who catches them. And many people I spoke to when I was researching for the art of creativity, these were songwriters, writers of lyrics, just all sorts of different crafts. They were all saying that the idea drops down to so many people at the same time. They hear songs that sound like the ones they've just written. So we have to kind of join the dots on that and think, what is going on? There is some collective, like, raining down these beautiful ideas, and we have to catch them.
Bob Dylan, who said, I don't write songs, I reach up into the air and grab them.
There you go. Yeah. And when I interviewed Katie Tunstall, songwriter, she talked about jumping up, get the little wisps from up there and bring them down, and then work them through. And
or
many people talk about reaching up and bringing it down.
well, Elizabeth Gilbert TED Talk on creativity, where she talks about the poet Ruth Stone, and she's up on the hillside above her house, and she sees a poem coming, and she runs down the hill to try and get to her typewriter before the poem does, and she's just a little too slow, and so she has to pull the poem back, and she winds up writing it backwards, where the last line is first and the first line is last, and then reversing it afterwards. And I mean, it's metaphoric, but it does feel like that.
It really does. And so I wonder, what does that tell us? The stories that we're telling right now, what does that tell us about ideas and where ideas come from? I find that fascinating. Where do ideas come from? Because one day, any particular day, we have, you probably know this, how many thoughts a day that
I've never.
I know
it's
between 50 and 70,000. Let's make it up. How do you know? How do you know? But say it's tens of thousands every day thoughts that we have, and they're coming in. Some of them get attended to and mused by, and others just are allowed to go just straight out the other side. But nevertheless, we are doing something with these ideas, and I will carry a notepad around with me, and if I have a moment of half an hour break, and I think, okay, I just want this to be an ideas moment, I can start writing loads and loads and loads of ideas down that weren't there before. So they just come from somewhere. Where do they come from? And I'm choosing to do something with some of those, and the ones that I move on will actually turn into something. So I can honor that. Isn't that an interesting process?
The best metaphor I've got for it is a radio, right? There are radio signals passing through us right now. Hundreds, thousands, country music, jazz, pop, sports, religion, politics, right? And unless we are tuned in, we don't notice. But as soon as we tune in, the signal's there. And then how much thinking we have about, oh, I'm not creative. Oh, I'm very creative. Oh, I'm only creative in this way. That's the static that makes it easier or harder to stay tuned.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because so many people have got a point of view on how creative they are. I've written a book on creativity, so people love a good old chat with me. I was in the gym this morning and someone said, oh, you're an author, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And she said, I've read your book. I really liked it, even though I'm not creative. I thought it's interesting that people would judge themselves horribly about their own creativity. I'm not creative. I'm not a writer. I'm not a dancer. I'm not a musician. And, it's interesting. And often I tell the story of like being in seminars with you guys with NLP, where we pick people out of audiences. They put their hands up. Who's got no musical ability? And the hands go up. Some of those find themselves on stage. They get dealt with by you guys and put into trance states. And then suddenly they're jamming or they're painting an incredible picture. I remember one seminar I was sitting in, a non-artist got pulled out onto stage, did an artwork because there were some materials there that were bought specifically for the purpose. They painted something and it was sold for £5,000 in the lunch break. Do you remember that?
I remember that. And I mean, this is my past life. I don't do that kind of work anymore, but absolutely. I remember that very specifically and vividly. And to me, what it means when somebody says I'm not creative, well, in a way, if creativity is coming from the ether, if it's coming from beyond us, none of us are creative. But we are either open to and receptive to that creative signal or not. So it's, you could say, I'm not creative means I haven't spent any time or attention tuning into the creativity network. I've spent my time and attention on other things. So it's accurate, but it's not true.
Yeah. And like doing writing workshops, some people come along and they start writing, and in a group of people, there are some people who will come up with fantastic writing that really flows. It's got a rhythm. It's beautiful to read. Others, it's clunky and it's just not there. So it's interesting that how varied these things are. And also watching, one of my clients is a beautiful painter of animals with colored, she uses colored pencils, and she will take a dog and come up with this incredible ornate masterpiece. And I wonder, wow, that is so good. It's like a photograph. How can you be that good? And yet she has the same apparatus as all of us, the same kind of senses, eyes and fingers the same. And yet there are these different skill bases and talent, almost sort of running through the consciousness.
Well, and I think there are inclinations towards particular forms of expression. And then it's the craft. If you put the time and attention on a particular craft, over time, you'll get good at it. I mean, that's just how any craft works. And so people think they're supposed to be good or not.
Yeah.
So people look at creativity as something they have or don't have, which clearly is true. But then they also look at, oh, I'm not a writer, I'm not a painter, I'm not a this, I'm not a that, which just means I have put no time and attention into that, but I tried it once and somebody said something mean.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
So
and it's like
a school teacher.
So it's like being an artist becomes an identity thing, as opposed to, no, if you let this express through you in this form, then at some point people will call you a writer. If you let it express through you in this form, some people will call you a painter. Express through you in this form, some people will call you, wow, they've got they just have a knack for business, right? It doesn't even have to be something that's called the arts.
Yeah.
It's just, what forms do you pour your time and attention into?
And there are things that you can choose to do. Like my book, The Art of Creativity, is organized around 7 habits of highly creative people, and there are similarities.
I wish I had one in front of me, because I would be going, The Art of Creativity, brought to you by, available now in all good booksellers.
There are ways to power it up as a human being, and connectivity to source, whatever that is for you, obviously is one great way. Meditation and clearing out the many fears and blocks we have about being a creative. That's pretty important too, because people do have very fixed ideas about how good they are creatively. It seems to be like a badge that people wear somehow, or I'm not creative, or I am creative. And I've lived that.
I always think there's a slight element with I'm not creative. I don't know if there's a name for it, but every time I have ever played golf in my life, which is a fair number of times, with players from tour pros to, there aren't many people worse than me, but 2 people worse than I am. Every new golf game begins with, oh yeah, I haven't played in months. Oh my God, my shoulder. And it's almost like I'm gonna apologize up front, and that gives me a little bit of permission to just try.
Yeah, and make mistakes.
So there's an element to which I think it's like kind of like, okay, I'm not creative, so I can do this, because if you judge me harshly, I already told you I wasn't creative.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, like, fair enough. Okay.
And it's a bit like, living life. We so fumbling around. All of us are just winging it in many ways, and making mistakes is one of the greatest things ever, because it's where you learn amazing things. And when you get tripped up, often there's a solution that arrives in a different vehicle and solves things. It's incredible. When I got really ill with brain cancer, and I had various experiences, and one very powerful experience, and suddenly I got a voice. I could sing. I could sing like an angel. And there was a ceremony at my house where we were sort of saying prayers to hopefully save my life. And there was some beautiful songs being sung.
Tune in next week to see whether or not it worked.
I was safe. I've been here a while. I think it's all okay. And people came with guitars and they were singing. And I could never sing, but I was in a community of people who were singing a lot. I live in Ibiza, and there's a big tribe of ceremony people who just go around singing medicine songs with their guitars. Is fantastic. So they all tipped up at my house and started singing, and I didn't know, but then I started singing, and I've always been off key and kept my voice very quiet from a singing perspective. And I started to sing, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing, that my voice was like some sort of cherub or bird song. It was fantastic. So this happened even though my vocal cords were exactly the same. Nothing had happened to me, and my issue was around my brain that I'd had the query around and the illness around. Nothing to do with my throat, but suddenly I could sing like an angel almost. And I belted out these songs, and people were like, "Whoa, Suze, we never knew you had a voice." And I said, "I
might have helped the brain not working because the static's in the brain, like it's not in the body." Unless, I mean, obviously people have different things going on with their bodies, but yeah, it makes sense that when, you know, I often talk about it like how much of your foot is on the hose, right? The source is always on.
Yeah.
So if nothing's coming through, it's because my foot's on the hose.
Right.
Always.
I love that. I haven't heard that before. I'm going to I think about that and use that in my own way of getting my foot off.
The only two variations, as far as I'm concerned, is where are you aiming the hose?
Yeah.
So am I aiming it at a book? Am I aiming it at a screenplay? Am I aiming it at a painting? Am I aiming at sing? Like, and how much of my foot is on it? Mm. And if I aim in the direction and take my foot off the hose, stuff's going to happen every time for everyone. But we just are so used to walking around on the hose wondering where the water is that we miss it.
Wow, great story. That is, I love it. Take your foot off the hose. Another one I love, David Lynch says, I asked David to do something a month or so ago, and I had a message back. David's keeping his eye on the donut, and he loves saying, keep your eye on the donut. And that to me is a great recipe for life. Whatever you really want to create, keep your eye on it. Keep your eye on that donut. So
is there a specific donut story that comes from? I
just love talking about keeping an eye on the donut, and that really appeals to me.
Great. I know, I did great. I absolutely love it.
Have you done a new book? Were you saying?
Well, it is. I almost had, to the point where, here it is. Except that it's not.
Except for what?
Except that it's not going to happen like this.
Oh.
So we got this far, and it wasn't right. Like I just knew it was. I've done this enough. I knew it wasn't right, and the reason that I wanted to do this book in particular was because one of my mentors, a woman named Mavis Karn, has been very reticent at letting her voice out into the world beyond her clients. And she works with kids and teenagers and in the prison system for many years and with professional athletes. So she's had this amazing life. She worked with women in South Africa. She worked with Desmond Tutu, but she was always wanting to, she's the only person who I ever brought in to teach on my programs who one of the conditions was that I couldn't share her information so that people couldn't reach out to her. Mm-hmm. But she just got to a point, and she's in her 80s where she was like, okay, I guess it's okay if. So that's the origin of the book, was me just wanting to get her voice out into the world. And she had up until this point written one thing that I knew about, which is this letter called The Secret, nothing to do with the book, The Secret, but it is one of the most beautiful, it's like the Desiderata. It's sort of a one sheet letter to kids and former kids. And it is one of the most beautiful pieces of writing I'd ever seen. So I wanted to bring that out. And it's been, you can find it online. Like it's found its way around the world. It found its way through the prison system in America after, like it was really impactful. And just never quite felt, we never quite nailed it. She kept kind of going, well, you can go through my audios of stuff I've done, and I did. Well, what's fascinating is the second I realized, no, this isn't working, she must have reached up or it reached down, because she just sent me, I haven't gone through it all yet, but literally this morning, about 45, 50 pages of new writing. And what? The bits that I looked at were so beautiful. And I realized, oh, that was the point.
Yes.
it wasn't this. Now it's hopefully it will still look something like this and just have her name bigger and my name not on it or smaller. But that was the point. It wasn't my. It wasn't mine. I was the catalyst, not the container.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that till I'd spent a year on it.
How wonderful.
So yeah, I'm sure there will be a next book, but it's not that one.
How fantastic. Oh, wonderful. Michael, it is always such a joy to talk to you. As we've been talking today, I was thinking, wow, I so enjoyed our time together and hearing you teach many, many times and always feeling inspired as I have been today. So it is so wonderful. I've really loved it.
Oh, well, lovely to see you. Congrats on America.
Yeah, thank you. So my little book of creativity is going out to America and is available in America, which is thrilling. Up to date, it's been in the UK and Europe and various territories and so on. It filtered out to it, and now it's heading to America. So I couldn't be happier, and I'm very grateful to all the teams that have worked hard. Yay! So I'm thrilled. Michael, gorgeous. I hope it's not such a long time before I see you again and speak to you again and be in touch. I feel like now we're moving in the world. I know you're out doing some tours and talking to people live again, which is your magnificent sweet spot. So I'm thrilled that you're doing that and you're getting out into the world as we all are now. We're beginning to move, and that other stuff seems to be in the past. So fingers crossed that we continue to get out there and talk to people and share some interesting, inspiring chats.
Nice. Great to see you. Thank you.
All right. Take good care. Thank you so much, Michael. Lots of love.